Have you ever had that feeling, that really frustrating feeling where you can read an English article? No problem. You get the grammar, you know the words, but then the second someone starts talking to you at a normal speed, it just turns into a blur of sound. Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to look at why that happens, and more importantly, a really surprising solution that doesn't start with your ears, it actually starts with your mouth. Let's get into it.
Right? It's this crazy paradox that so many of us face. You see the words printed out, and they make total sense. But when those exact same words are spoken by a native speaker, it's like you're hearing a totally different language. Look, if this is you, you're not alone. And it's not because you have bad ears. The real problem is that there's a huge gap between the English we read and the English we hear. And here's that gap in a nutshell. In a textbook, we learn to read it word by word. What do you want to do? Super clear, right? But in reality, what you hear is a connected, flowing sound, something like, what do you want to do? You see? The letters on the page are not a map to the sounds you're actually hearing, and closing that gap is everything.
So this brings us to the big, kind of counterintuitive idea for today. The secret to getting better at listening isn't just to listen more and more. It's actually about understanding and then learning to make the sounds of spoken English yourself. Think about it. When your mouth knows how to make the sound, your brain finally knows what to listen for. You start to hear the music of the language, not just a bunch of separate words.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we learn the music? Well, we're going to decode what sounds like a native speaker mumble, and it all comes down to 3 simple secrets. Once you get these, you'll basically have the key to understanding fast, natural English. Let's jump into the first one.
All right, the very first and probably the most important shift in your thinking is this. You have to stop thinking about individual words. Native speakers don't talk like a computer, pronouncing each separate word. No, they group words together into little thought groups, or what we're going to call chunks.
Now, this chunking, it's not random. It's built around the words that carry the most meaning. You know, the nouns, the verbs, the important stuff. This is a totally different way of thinking from the word-by-word translation we might have learned in school. We're hunting for sound units, not just grammar units.
Just look at these examples. You don't hear, have you ever been? You hear one smooth sound, have you ever been? Or, I should have known, just melts together into, I should have known. You don't hear the spaces between those words because, well, when we speak, they're just not there. The goal is to start hearing and eventually speaking in these connected chunks.
Okay, so we're grouping words into chunks. But what's happening inside those chunks? And that leads us to secret number 2. The little, less important words, they don't just connect to each other. Their sounds actually change. They get shorter, they get squished, they get reduced. This is where that mumbly sound really comes from.
So these small words, we call them function words, like the, of, to. Their main job is grammar, not meaning. And in the flow of natural speech, they become weak. They kind of get absorbed by the bigger, more important words around them. And let me be clear, this isn't lazy or sloppy speech. It's actually the super efficient natural system of spoken English.
So let's look at some of these secret rules. For example, a T sound that's between 2 vowels, that almost always softens into a quick D or even an R sound. Or the H at the beginning of a word like have or her, if it's not a stressed word, that H sound just disappears, poof. And the word of almost always just becomes a simple sound. These aren't random mistakes, they're the predictable patterns of spoken English.
Here's a perfect example of this in action. We don't say, what I need is. The T in what is now between 2 vowel sounds, so it flips to an R sound, wara. And the D at the end of need links right into is and softens, need is. So altogether, you get waranitas. See? Once you know the rule, you can actually predict the sound. It's not a mystery anymore.
And that brings us to our final secret. And this is the one that really ties everything else together. It's all about the rhythm. English has a distinct musical beat, and that beat is created by the pattern of stressed and unstressed words. This is maybe the most important key to unlocking that natural sound.
What this means is that English is what you call a stress-timed language. So imagine a steady drum beat. The important words, the content words, land right on that beat. And all those little function words we just talked about, they get squeezed and rushed in between the beats. It's all about getting to the next important stressed word. That's what creates the music.
So how do you know what to stress? Well, here's a pretty simple rule of thumb. You want to stress the words that carry the real meaning,
nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and you reduce and de-emphasize all those little grammatical words. This push and pull between stressed and unstressed words is the engine that drives the whole rhythm of English.
Just listen to the difference here. A flat, word-by-word reading sounds like this. Can I just say something crazy? But the natural rhythm is more like a heartbeat. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Can I just becomes a quick little lead-up to the first big beat, say. Then something leads us to the next beat, crazy. Listen, can I just say something crazy? Hearing and feeling that rhythm is everything.
So there you have it. We've decoded the 3 secrets: chunking words together, reducing the small words, and finding the rhythm in the stress. The final piece of the puzzle is to take all this and build a new mindset. It's about shifting from just reading English with your eyes to actually feeling and hearing it with your mouth.
So here is a super practical 4-step loop you can use with any sentence starting today. First, just look at the sentence and decide where the sound chunks are. Second, find all the places where sounds are going to link together and reduce. Third, listen for and find the main stressed words. Find the beat. And then finally, the most important step, say it out loud. Don't just read the words, try to mimic the rhythm, the melody you've just uncovered. So, if you walk away with just one thing from all this, please let it be this. You have to stop treating English like it's just a bunch of letters on a page. To truly hear it and to understand it, you first have to understand its sound and its rhythm. And I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We spend so much time training our eyes to read and trying to train our ears to listen. But what if the most powerful tool we have for understanding has been right under our nose this whole time? What if the real key to unlocking your ears is actually found in your mouth? It's about teaching your mouth to make the music so your brain can finally recognize the song.